the unrest.
You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. You have to dominate. And most of you are weak. We're going to clamp down very, very strong. But you got to arrest people. You have to try people. You have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff again.
Other officials on the call included Attorney General Bill Barr and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, who both sided with President Trump on the use of aggressive tactics. Also on the call, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, whom President Trump said he tapped to oversee the protests.
The Attorney General is here, right here, Bill Barr, and we will activate Bill Barr and activate him very strongly. In many places, if not most places, you have this ingredient of extremist, anarchist types, agitators who are driving the violence. Law enforcement response is not going to work unless we dominate the streets, as the president said. We have to control the streets. I agree. We need to dominate the battle space. I think the sooner that you mass and dominate the battle space, the quicker this dissipates, and we can get back to the right normal. Got a number of people here that you'll be seeing a lot of. General Milley is here, who's head of Joint Chiefs of Staff, a fighter, a warrior, had a lot of victories, had no losses. And he hates to see the way it's being handled in the various states, and I've just put him in charge.
While military Humvees were seen deployed in major U.S. cities, the White House press secretary declined to offer details on General Milley's exact role or to say why a top military leader would be in charge of overseeing domestic law enforcement. Joining us now, senior White House reporter for NBC News Digital, Shannon Pettypiece. Shannon, they're obviously talking to the governors on that call about the rioting, about the looting we've seen that in some ways has overshadowed the large peaceful protests around the death of George Floyd. But how does President Trump view General Milley's role? What exactly is he going to be doing here?
Well, yesterday the president said very directly from the Rose Garden that if governors and mayors do not take the action, he wants to see the forceful action to stomp out these protests, he is going to send in the military. Now, there's a lot of questions about how he can do that legally. You mentioned earlier this Insurrection Act, this 200-year-old act that he could possibly implement to use military police forces domestically. But, that's going to get into a real complex situation if we're going to go down that road. And I don't know we're going to go down there yet, but the president's certainly threatening it. This call with governors was certainly remarkable. But then I think the scene we saw that you were talking about earlier playing out in Lafayette Square Park was a real manifestation of what the president is calling for. Within the White House, the reaction I have been hearing from, aides, people close to the White House about how that chaotic scene yesterday went, that brutal scene yesterday went, they think it went great. This scene was exactly what the White House and the president's advisors were hoping for. They wanted a show of strength. They wanted to counter this narrative that the president is hiding in a bunker. They wanted to take back his space. And this use of force is the type of force they say the president wants to see other mayors using. So this they see in the White House in Trump's world as a victory. So just that thinking to give you an indication of where this is going. And just really to give you a little bit of color of what it's like being here at the White House while all this was unfolding yesterday. You could hear those flashbangs while the president was speaking in the Rose Garden to the point where they almost sort of rattle your chest. These flashbangs are so strong. You could smell the pepper spray on the White House North Lawn as the president was walking, starting to make his way across the park. During his speech, there is the roar of helicopters. There is the constant drone of sirens. That is the atmospherics here. And when I talked to one person close to the White House, was that a problem? No, they liked that. They thought that atmospherics, that chaos, that brutality going on was what they wanted to see and the message that they wanted to send, Willie.
All right, Shannon Pettypiece, thank you very much. Jonathan Lemire, looking ahead to today, if the White House considered this to be a strong showing, which I'm sorry, I don't think that everybody who works in there is is just completely staggeringly stupid. They must have seen that this was a bit empty in its display, holding up the Bible, standing in front of the church, tear gassing people in Washington, D.C. to make way for the president to quickly walk over there and to stand there in front of a church. They must know today that more is needed, that maybe a little bit more of a careful articulation of the complexities of this situation. Or are we just looking ahead to more of this?
Nika, there's been some preliminary discussions about other measures the White House could take. As we report today, they're discussing perhaps creating a new task force, maybe led by Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson, to deal more directly with some of the protesters' issues. There's discussion of more criminal justice reform. The president believes that has been his best political move so far with the African-American community. But largely, we're going to see more of what we saw yesterday, and it's of a pair. It's the call at the governors, and then what happened later at Lafayette Park. The president, could not have been stressed more strongly, in some ways angrily, at these governors. He fought with some of the Democrats on the call, called them weak, called them jerks, saying you need to crack down on these protesters. I'll give you the military, call the National Guard. And this is a political move. But this is all about, because everything this president does, it's about November. He's trying to project strength. We know what that means to this president. It's a strong-arm tactics. He's making the bet that the American people are rattled by these protests. They're rattled by the riots and looting, ignoring some of the underlying issues, of course, in the president's mind, and that they want to see the federal government clamp down on this. He believes a show of military might. We know he's always been enamored with the military. He wanted to have tanks on Pennsylvania Avenue last year for the 4th of July parade. Well, he got military vehicles on Pennsylvania Avenue yesterday as part of his effort to clear out this park. And this, I think we're going to see more displays of strength from this president. He's going to demand other cities do the same. And if they don't, he would, we've been told, act upon his threat, if you will, to send the military. And a final point. Yesterday, indeed, was a photo op. The White House has already put out slow motion video of the president strolling across Lafayette Park, which now means that was a taxpayer-funded photo op that we saw yesterday. And one Trump senior advisor last night said this to me. He said, actually, there were 2 photo ops. Yes, the president in front of the church with a Bible. We wanted that. But the other photo op was clearing the park, that display of strength in America.